Good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield from Seattle. Stay right there, Mark. A little climate march yesterday. I say a little because the mainstream media didn't cover it. A little intro with our friends from Midnight Oil. And, of course, beds are burning, Mr. Kreider, as we bring in our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield, of course, from the great Seattle, and who is covering not only tomorrow's May Day, but was yesterday covering the climate change march in Seattle, Capitol Hill Times in Washington State, and, of course, Daily Kos, and right here on the Jeff Santos Show. We'll talk to him next week as well. Mark, what was it like yesterday, my friend, in Seattle?
Well, rainy as usual, but there was a large crowd. But actually, speaking of climate, we have had a record rainfall since October. We've had 22 inches in Seattle. So it rained again, but there were plenty of people out there, thousands. Nothing like the 220,000 in Washington, D.C., but definitely a large contingent in Seattle. And it's definitely an issue that folks in the Northwest care about and that folks in Seattle care about. We're an anti-coal, anti-oil train kind of town. And we had those Shell protests, of course, against the drilling rig that they brought into Elliott Bay illegally. So we have a history of fighting against fossil fuels here.
Yeah. Was it peaceful pretty much for the whole time that you were there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Of course, that doesn't...
An international campaign to divest from fossil fuels, including Canada, New Zealand, the United States, the UK, Australia, the Netherlands, Brazil, all sorts of other countries around the planet. And they're organizing under a hashtag fossil free culture. So just to let people know, there's an international drive between the May 5th and the 13th to divest from fossil fuels around the world. And people can go to globaldivestmentmobilization.org to check that out. And you can go to my Twitter feed and see a post that I just put out about it.
Okay. Mark Taylor-Canfield on Twitter. And finally, May Day tomorrow. What are we expecting tomorrow? Hopefully less police issues. We'll get into that in the third hour of this show. But what's your take on that?
Well, I'm definitely hoping that that all sides will show some restraint, because there is a lot of tension in the air, and the media up here, the corporate media at least, has been sort of talking up the potential of violence again, because, you know, they love those visuals of the burning dumpsters and broken windows. But, you know, the police department, and I've, been writing about this here locally, doing op-eds for different newspapers, they need to realize that they need to protect the rights of journalists during these events, too, and try to keep the concussion grenades away from the journalists. That would be great.
Yeah, it'd be great.
That's my thought.
Mark, we'll talk to you next week. Be safe tomorrow, my friend. I know you'll be covering it, and we'll check out your Twitter feed as well, Mark Taylor-Canfield on Twitter. Thank you, my friend. We'll be right back. Joe Williams on deck.
Every 30 minutes, another innocent person is killed due to a drunk driver.
My best friend.
My brother.
My poor grandchild.
My sister.
My father.
My husband.
My mom. My mommy.
Well, we get lots to talk about. Yesterday you had your annual sort of the prom of all the Washington, D.C. folks, the TV correspondents, White House dinner. Yeah, exactly. More people with glasses there than any convention I know of. But anyways, I wear glasses, so I can say it. But the fact is that, Mr. Trump wasn't there. He was at Harrisburg, PA, pumping his own horn. It's unbelievable. It's just reality TV 101.
Well, and that's because nobody at the Washington Correspondents' Dinner would do it. They wouldn't toot his horn, even if you had all the trumpeters in a 5-mile radius. But I kind of opted out this year, mainly because of the same reason. I felt it had gotten kind of bloated and a little bit too celebrity-focused. But this past dinner, ironically, was probably one of the more focused on journalism. You had Carl Woodward and Bernstein there talking about how they broke the Watergate case. And you also had some fair respect given to the scholarship winners. So Trump may have done everybody a favor by not showing up at a dinner that ostensibly was to honor him, which I guess is probably it's probably a microcosm of this entire 100-day presidency, that Trump's doing people a favor when he doesn't do something. You know, otherwise, it's just been all chaos all the time, and we're trying to figure out what shoe is going to drop next.
Yeah, it is all chaos all the time in Washington. And as a reporter, I mean, you must be insane. You know, you never know what's going to happen, whether it's at 3 o'clock in the morning with a tweet that the Orange Julius is sending out, or whether it's, you know, at deadline at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and all of a sudden he wants to go and bomb North Korea. I mean, it really must be a heck of a job for you as a journalist, you know, covering Washington.
As a journalist, I'm thrilled to be doing this in this era. As a citizen, I'm completely horrified that this is what's going on. Then I have a wave particle duality of nature going on in my job. On the one hand, it's really good for business, but on the other hand, it's really good for business, which isn't always a great thing for average citizens. But look, I mean, I think pretty much what has happened in the last 100 days is what a lot of people pretty much expected. He has brought the kind of chaotic White House campaign, the kind of fly by the seat of the pants, know nothing, nativist, America first version of himself, installed it in the Oval Office, and completely shattered a lot of the norms of 240 years of predecessors, where he's done things that nobody else has done and nobody else has done for a reason. I mean, from having meetings at Mar-a-Lago to having a cabinet where every third appointee is either a millionaire or has some kind of a financial tie that they'll benefit from the position that they've gotten, from firing rockets at Syria and threatening to put boots on the ground there, and thumbing his nose at Kim Jong-un, and the list goes on. I'm running out of breath here trying to think of all of the things that Trump has done that's really completely obliterated the norms of the office. But by contrast, you can at least look at the fact that the office has changed him to a degree. And by that, I mean he has not become the fabled presidential Trump that everybody wants to have, but he's become a Trump who's had to turn his back on campaign promises, basically because the reality of the office will not allow him to do what he wants to do. And that, again, might be a blessing in that he really can't build the wall. He really can't declare China a trade manipulator and start a trade war. And he can't do some of the other more nefarious things that he mentioned on the campaign trail. So it's a split decision as far as we're concerned right now, but the split is mostly bad.
Talking with my good friend Joe Williams of U.S. News and World Report here on the Jeff Santos Show. We'll take your calls in the next segment as we break at 1:45 Eastern Time. Let me ask you this. I was talking with a couple of people in my building the other day who were very scared. These are both minorities. And they both, one from Africa, the other person Caribbean American, and they were both very, very concerned. Now they tend to be a little bit more relieved. I tried to calm them down. I hope I did some good. And they almost look at him as the buffoon in chief. And I guess that gives a lot of people, you know, the sense of panic that you talked about at the top of the show. Is that something that you're seeing, whether it's in Washington or when you talk to people outside the Beltway? Or is that still that, oh, my God, we're going to die tomorrow because there's a missile headed our way?
Well, I think there's still an undercurrent of anxiety. I mean, let's call it that. I mean, initially it was full-blown panic and massive muscle-flexing resistance. That's still there because, you know, you look at the national reaction when he fired rockets at Syria. Sure. You look at the national reaction with how he's handling North Korea. I mean, there's still a possibility that we could all end up in a fiery, smoking hole because of some capricious decision that the commander-in-chief has decided to make. On the other hand, the resistance, I think, has kept a lot of resistance and reality, I guess we'll pair those two together, has kept a lot of those ambitions about mass deportation forces, about barring Syrians and other people from Middle Eastern countries from entering the United States, from, you know, just completely shredding the Constitution writ large. that has dissipated because the reality is a lot of the stuff that Trump was pushing out on the campaign trail just simply can't happen. The wall, for example. I mean, Congress is unwilling to pay for it. Mexican has said, no way, Jose, are we going to, dole out for this thing that's going to hurt both our countries. And, that and other realities have kept Trump from doing some of his more outrageous statements. Now, that being said, we still do have mass deportations happening. We still do have a Congress that has stripped away the filibuster for Supreme Court nominations, which, by the way, was kept there by Democrats for a purpose. They stripped it away. They have the fifth justice on the conservative side. They are fairly likely to get another conservative on the court before Trump leaves office. I mean, the odds of that are fairly high. So there still is plenty to worry about. But as far as the immediate nuclear war that everybody was expecting, it's kind of ratcheted down. We're probably at DEFCON 4, maybe sliding towards 3, but we're still pretty close to some places that we don't want to be as far as the nation's future is concerned.
Talking with Joe Williams here on the Jeff Santos Show. As I said, we'll take some calls at the next break. Before we go to break, talk to me about this whole health care thing. We're obviously trying to keep the government open. We're down to basics here in terms of, legislation in Congress.
Yeah.
But
it's a low bar, man.
It is a low bar. I think it's the lowest I've ever seen in my lifetime. But what about this health care revising, part 3? It seems to be, all of it is going to be horrific for America because it's going to continue to cut and cut and cut. Where are we with that? And is it real? Because they still don't even think they can get it through the Senate, can they?
Well, it's real in the sense that it's still an option that's on the table, and it's something that everybody wants, but nobody can really agree on how to do it. And by everybody, I mean the Republican majority that's swept into power about 4 months ago. I mean, they still are very much itching to repeal and replace Obamacare. But again, this is what I was mentioning earlier. Reality has a funny way of wrecking people's plans. In this one, it's not so much that the conservatives aren't getting a little taste of what they want, I mean, which namely is a healthcare plan that really is anything but. It's a matter of that the Freedom Caucus had to be satisfied because the original bill that they came across with wasn't killing people fast enough. It wasn't, stripping the needy of health care plans and giving upwards and tax breaks to the wealthy. But you are seeing some Republicans grounded in reality, of which they're a declining number. They are saying, look, dude, this thing is really going to be bad for everybody. And as far as that's concerned, we can't support it because it's going to hurt my constituents. At the same time, you have to give a certain amount of credit to the resistance movement that flooded town hall meetings and the real people, the sane Republicans who live in the real world, who were harassing their representatives and saying, look, if this thing passes, it's going to hurt me. It's not going to target the people that you want to target. So basically, it's the same combination of reality and fantasy are colliding, and reality is tending to win mainly because of people that know what this will actually do.
Well, we're going to come back, talk more with our good friend Joe Williams. It's the Jeff Santos Show. Check us out. RevolutionRadioNetwork.com. Back in a flash.
I'm Ben Utek. I played high school, college, and pro football, helping my team win the 2006 championship. It was an amazing day, but it can't compare to the joy I feel every day with my loving wife and 3 beautiful daughters. My football career ended after I suffered my 5th concussion. Did you know that over 1 million athletes suffer a concussion each year? That includes boys and girls, every age, every type and level of sport. It isn't always clear that a player has had a concussion. So parents, athletes, and coaches need to learn about concussion signs and symptoms. The American Academy of Neurology recommends
investing, activism, rebuilding America together. This is the Jeff Santos Show.
We're talking to Joe Williams, who's a big Wizards fan there in Washington, D.C. I was going to... we were talking with our good friend Mark, and we may bring him back from San Francisco here, something about an issue that I think is really interesting because it's affecting the world of Washington, and that is taking on the Heritage Foundation, some protests there that apparently closed it down, Joe. So let's actually, Ron, let's bring back Mark to discuss this issue here. Mark, you're next with Joe Williams, and I want to bring that back up because if it's affecting the way the world works in Washington, D.C., that is a way to connect the outside to the inside. And I presume that that gets you, as a liberal Democrat and a Bernie guy, kind of excited, Mark.
Yes, and what I was excited about is that people are protesting where the source of the legislation is coming from for the Republican Party. It's coming from ALEC and the Heritage Foundation. That's where you're getting these lousy tax policies and all these other 1% incorporated favored legislation, and it's completely bypassing representative government of the people. And so when people vote for Republicans, they're voting for lapdogs of the Heritage Foundation and ALEC, and they're not being represented, and this knowledge is not really known. But now that protesters are going to these places, they're going to be able to really exploit the fact that people aren't being represented, that these think tanks are drawing up the legislation that is for the 1% in the corporations, and people need to be educated that that's how the Republican Party is functioning.
Yeah. Well, Joe, it's one thing to have a protest and a march when these town halls happen, across the country, or a protest that, hit the streets for climate change as it did yesterday, or the Women's March in all these other cities. But when it hits Washington, people take notice. I don't know how much the mainstream media in Washington covered that, but anytime you shut down a building, that tends to, alert people in the powers of the Republican Party, and for that matter, in conservative, America. And obviously, Heritage Foundation is center stage there. What do you make of this, Joe?
I think that what's happening in the protests to shut down Heritage was in very much a kind of an aftershock of all the other protests. Not only did it shut down the building, but it's also serving to draw attention to this fairly not quite well-known outside the Beltway organization that nonetheless has a lot of influence inside of it. I mean, they're the fine folks who gave us Neil Gorsuch. In fact, he was on their approved list of Supreme Court candidates that Donald Trump got to pick from, and it was a sop to the right wing to sort of prove to them that he is, in fact, a real conservative, which, I mean, the jury's still kind of out on that, given the way he's been governing and some of the things he said about foreign policy. So I think that while protests may not necessarily move the needle inside the Capitol dome, I think certainly something like this draws attention and keeps people, it creates the information through the model that keeps coming to mind is like the people's mic, right, that we have at some of the left-wing protests where somebody will shout it in front and it'll echo all the way through the back. And I think that's what has to happen here, is you protest the Heritage Foundation, you get it on the front of some newspapers or even on the inside of some newspapers, they get a mention, it starts to pick up steam, people start understanding that a lot of this stuff is the origin of some of the more nefarious things that Trump has wanted to do, and that translates into action. I go back to what we were talking about earlier about the healthcare plan. A lot of people showed up at those town hall meetings. Trump says they were paid protesters. 9 out of 10 they weren't, and a lot of them were actually Republicans who were really concerned about what was going on. They got their information and got awoken to what was happening through protests and through coverage of protests. So it might seem like a small thing on its outset, but it could be a pond ripple and it could get even more amplified as time goes on.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, thank you for bringing this up, and I think there's a lot of room here to continue these protests and go right to the heart of the conservative movement, which I think is going to implode sooner rather than later with the fights between the Trump side and the institutional conservative Republicans, whether they're the folks that are tied to ALEC and tied to the Heritage Foundation, or tied to the military-industrial complex, or whatever the case may be. So this, to me, is good for the progressive movement. Thank you, Mark, for the call. Joe, if you think about where the Democrats are going to fight back here, we're going to be talking with our good friend Bernie Porn over the Michigan pollster, and what he is telling me is that there's a big movement within the Bernie, Our Revolution folks that are happening in Michigan. And we're also hearing from our previous caller in Minneapolis, St. Paul, where the state party there, we're seeing an influx of Bernie Sanders folks. So it seems to me that the Democrats outside the Beltway, I heard some of the pundits this morning that are clueless in Washington, D.C. on some of the Sunday shows saying, the Democrats don't have a message, they're all lost. Well, I think that their message is resonating. It's just not in Washington because they don't have the power to resonate. They can't put anything to paper because the Republicans control everything. So there's a disconnect there in terms of information on where the Democrats are going. Your view from this, from inside the Beltway?
I think that's correct, and I think you have to say that some of the more institutional Democrats have gotten the memo. And what comes to mind immediately upon saying that is Chuck Schumer. He is talking the talk, and he has tried to walk the walk, and he is a singular Democrat who has been on the business end of a lot of that pressure. Ahead of some votes in Congress, just after he was named minority leader, there were people outside of his home declaring that he should do the right thing. And the right thing, in their view, was to filibuster Neil Gorsuch. Now, everybody and their brother knew that the outcome was going to be pretty much preordained. Gorsuch was going to meet. Mitch McConnell was kind of hedging, but everybody pretty much knew he was going to pull the trigger on the filibuster. Nevertheless, Schumer decided to fight, even though a lot of people were whispering in his ear saying, listen, we need to save this for another day. He got the memo. He's fighting. He's taking Trump on head on, and other people are trying to follow in his lead. Elizabeth Warren is also another happy warrior on that regard. She has been trolling Trump, from day one almost. So the message is getting there, and outside the Beltway, the Bernie tour is having an impact, and people are sort of starting to understand that this is what the Republican Party is about, and in order to push back, they have to get involved.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And on top of that, I think that the Democrats are concerned. I mean, this is a small thing since he's an ex-president now, but Obama taking the $400,000 for this Wall Street speech doesn't look good. But I think that, if you state what you need to do, and, again, Obama is not in power anymore, the fact is that, you take on Wall Street by reforms, and you maybe have to, start at the local level, making sure that you're not having all these candidates take a ton of money from Wall Street to get elected, and then owe their victory to Wall Street. So there's a lot there, and I think it's going to be very interesting, Mr. Williams.
To say the least. No doubt. Stay tuned. It's going to be fascinating. Might be horrifying a time or two, but we'll keep an eye on it.
Definitely. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Thank you, Joe Williams. U.S. News World Report. Follow him on Twitter at VerbDC. It is the Jeff Santos Show that you're tuned into. We'll be right back with our good friend Bernie Porn. Get the latest on Michigan. You're listening to the Revolution Radio Network.
Live from the palatial studios at Emerson College in beautiful downtown Boston. This is the Jeff Santos Show on the Revolution Radio Network. Rebuilding America together, investing, activism, and supporting the middle class. Now, here's Jeff.
Welcome to Hour 2 of the Jeff Santos Show. We are live from Cambridge, Massachusetts, as we take on the last day of April 2017, get prepared for the month of May. All around this country, people are getting engaged, marching in rallies. We heard from our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield in Seattle earlier in the last hour. Of course, you can always go to revolutionradionetwork.com, get podcasts of the show. They're posted within 24 hours of the broadcast origination, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. And, of course, you can listen online, Revolution Radio Network, as well as radio stations around the country, like Sarasota's AM 1210 and AM 1510 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and our good friends here in Boston on Wednesdays, 7 to 8 at WBDA 102.9. Today's about Michigan, folks. We're going to be doing a whole hour on the Detroit uprising or riots in 1967. Of course, the artist you're hearing now is a product of Motown, the great music industry that gave us Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin. And the people of Detroit, Michigan, particularly in the African-American community, have been looking for respect for a long time, and they're still looking for respect, those who are black, white, brown in Detroit, Michigan today. And, well, are they getting it? They have a new mayor. Some people think he's pretty progressive. He's up for re-election. They got a governor who, of course, puts lead in the water of the paint and then hires the guy who he hired to take over Flint, now to take over the Detroit school system. I think he's out of there as well. But let's talk about Michigan. There's nobody better than our good friend, the director of polling, Epic MRA, and of course also polling for the Detroit Free Press. It's our good friend. It's been a long time, but we welcome back to the microphones of the Jeff Santos Show, Mr. Detroit, Bernie Porn. Bernie, great to have you back.
Glad to be with you, Jeff.
Well, I think we're going to use that Aretha Franklin respect audio next time we have you on. It's going to be your theme song, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Great memories of. Let's see. I think she sang that in the Blues Brothers.
That's right. And there's a lot of history, of course, coming from those great studios there in Detroit City and Motown. Well, there's obviously a lot of history, and you have covered it, being a political professional, working in the state houses there in Lansing, to your work as a pollster. And there are changes going on. We heard from one of our callers today in Minneapolis about the strength of our revolution, Bernie Sanders movements, and I hear that it's also catching steam in Michigan as well. What do you tell us of the movement there in Michigan?
Well, in our last survey, we have 50% to 35% saying that the country's off on the wrong track, and after Barack Obama left office, why he has a 59 to 36% favorability rating, while at the same time Rick Snyder has a 51 to 43% unfavorable rating, and Donald Trump a 53 to 38% unfavorable rating, and he gets a negative job rating of 56 to 39%, with 43% giving him a poor rating. And if you think that's bad, it's not as bad as Rick Snyder's numbers. He has a 61% negative job rating, 37% positive, and a lot of that is because of the lead in the water in Flint. Once that happened and it became public, well, his numbers dropped really precipitously, and they haven't come back up since.
Well, it obviously is an opportunity, for the Democrats. Obviously, we all know that Hillary didn't spend much time there, decided to run on, attacking Trump's sexual issues, and didn't spend time on the economy. We know back when we talked to you just after the election that Stan Greenberg, the former pollster on Bill Clinton in 1992, offered advice, and the folks, Mr. Podesta and the other Mr. Mook and company said, "Oh no, we can do it better. We're smarter." And Mr. Trump ends winning in a very close race over Hillary Clinton. Is that sort of, blind as a bat kind of approach by some of the Democrats? Is that now sort of, okay, we learned our lesson, let's go with somebody who actually won the Democratic primary in Bernie Sanders?
Well, I think that there's a lot of folks believing that, and certainly Bernie was able to win in Michigan in the presidential primary, and he was able to generate a great deal of enthusiasm, which surprised everyone, and he was able to win in areas outside of the African American areas where she won. However, she did not turn out nearly as many African Americans as she needed to in the primary, and she did the same thing in the general election. As a matter of fact, when we had, with a week out, our poll showing that it had narrowed to 4 points, and all of a sudden you did have Hillary Clinton visiting Michigan, as well as Donald Trump, but I think a couple more times, and a number of other surrogates, including Bill Clinton, and everyone was trying to turn out the African American vote in Michigan. They came up short, and of course you know the story that Trump won by a little over 10,000 votes in Michigan, the closest since Jim Blanchard lost to John Engler back in 1990.
We're talking with Bernie Porn of Epic MRA, the great pollster, also for the Detroit Free Press, and was a frequent contributor during the lead up to the 2016 presidential race, and we're looking forward to doing more with him as we look at the 2018 race for governor and some of those other lower ballot initiatives that are going on. Talk to me before we take a couple of calls, Bernie. People who really want to get your taste on the movement that is going on. Are we seeing that the progressive movement? I know that the mayor is under that title. I'm not familiar with his politics enough, but a lot of people feel he'll win re-election there. There's obviously a lot of people who are running in the state houses. I don't know how much the gerrymandering has gone on there in the state house races. So I don't know.
Yeah.
What does that look like then? So is it really then the Democrats, in order to get control of the pencil, as our good friend Jerry Austin would say, that they got to win the governorship, and then that's how you can really, figure out a way over the next 4 or 5 years when you can get, a new redistricting that you can potentially take back control of the House or Senate in Lansing?
It will be important to have a redistricting that is successful for Democrats, and there is a proposal to try and change the manner in which redistricting is done in Michigan. I don't know whether it will make the ballot or not, but there's been a lot of discussion about that, and as a matter of fact, in my former life, that was something that I had done. As a matter of fact, if you look at the court case on the 1980 redistricting, I'm listed as one of the authors of the redistricting plan that was adopted by a 3-judge panel with one amendment, one change at that time, and that was one where Democrats had a majority, and now you have Republicans with a solid majority in the congressional delegation in Michigan. And if you look at the congressional districting map, the very definition of gerrymandering, there's a couple of districts that just kind of jump right out.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, we've talked with our first caller here for you, Bernie, Rudy, many times, who's a big fan of yours, about stealing elections and how the voting machines and all the other issues that went on in Michigan in a very close race happened. Let's bring back Rudy from Chicago. You're next with Bernie Porn. First with Bernie Porn. How you doing, Rudy?
Okay, and Bernie, your title, Bernie Porn, is living up to its reputation by talking about Trump. And I would say that, could you, I got a question. How rapidly does the message by word of mouth travel?
Well, we do a lot of polling for school districts, and if it is in an area that is not dominated by electronic media and a good TV media market and radio media market, why you will often have word of mouth noted as the top form of or source of information for school districts and local governments. So it can travel fairly fast, depending on what the issue is.
Right. My top thing, priority is to bring precinct captains back into the political realm. I think I should have someone in a precinct or what have you from the Democratic Party just stop by and talk to a family. Pick a family each month or so. Go to this home and talk to those people about the issues. And because there's a lot, the people can't get real information from the media. It's impossible. And talk and tell them the truth. I mean, I do that myself. People I meet from.
And you're an 80-year-old guy.
Some issues. Yeah, and I didn't know that. I didn't know this. The other day, a friend of mine was worried about the deficit. Well, next time I see him, have you seen this Republican proposal about tax reform? What do you think that's going to do to the deficit? So
the deficit would really go up high if the budget and the tax proposals are approved that Donald Trump has proposed.
But people don't realize it.
Well, I know it, and the other thing is with what he has proposed in terms of funding for cleaning up the Great Lakes, almost totally eliminating it. People in Michigan are very, very upset about that, and they do not know as much about that as they need to know. But after claiming that he's a great friend of Michigan, to then propose eliminating funding for cleaning up the Great Lakes and not really paying attention to the Asian carp, which is of great concern to Michiganders. I think a lot of people are starting to have second thoughts, even in Michigan, about their choice of president. You have, especially among women who were supportive of Donald Trump, they're having second thoughts based on some of the proposals he has come out with, and even what he has proposed in the healthcare arena. The Obamacare, according to all national polls, as well as some polling we have done, is increasing in popularity, and people see a lot of advantages to it that would in fact go away if the Republican plan were approved.
Rudy, thank you for the call, my friend.
Yeah,
you raise great points, and I think that the precinct captain is something our good friend Governor Dukakis will look to have on in the next couple of weeks, is a big fan of as well, because you got to get back to getting the message out. I want to go to Florida here in a second, but the whole flip-flop, Bernie, of Mr. Trump on whether or not he's going to end NAFTA, which of course is a huge issue in Michigan, or whether or not you're going to renegotiate, which we have no idea what that means. That's going to be a big issue. 30 seconds on that before we go to Peter, who I know wants to talk about labor.
Well, that is obviously one of the issues that he pushed in the campaign that helped him win Michigan, and it's also something that helped Bernie win in Michigan over Hillary.
Right.
So that's an issue that I think people are paying attention to, and just the change in position. It's not just NAFTA, but it's a whole host of issues that he has changed his position on, which kind of, I think, gives the people the notion that, well, maybe he isn't too much in terms of principles or real principles, if they can shift that easily.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the phones to Plant City, Florida, and bring in our good friend Peter, who has been talking about the issue of trade and effect on his former home state of Wisconsin, just across the lake in Michigan. You're next with Bernie Porn. Peter, how are you, sir?
Hey, doing great. Glad you got Bernie on.
Great guest.
Real quick.
Thank you.
Hey, real quick, Bernie, though. You got to remember, the Democratic Party put Hillary in the most pathetic candidate possible. Those 2 or 3 generations understand how her husband stuck a knife in the labor's gut and twisted it and twisted it and twisted it with NAFTA. They saw their whole lives and generations destroyed. The black community with the Clinton crime bill destroyed the black community. And then the Clintons come out and, they don't even try to take Michigan because people knew you couldn't trust her. There was no enthusiasm. The thing about it is, and Robbie Mook and that, I think they wrote off Michigan. You had Jennifer Granhill, who used to be your governor. What a useless person that she turns out to be. She didn't think that the people of Michigan didn't know who screwed her. And then with the Clinton baggage, I mean, labor, really. I mean, it's like Romney running against Obama on Romney Care. It just didn't make any sense. There was no family that damaged the Democratic working base more than Bill Clinton ever did. And they cashed in, just like Obama is today. Obama, he's getting $400,000 doing a health care thing, and he's doing that because he took single payer off the table. He's cut
him and the mayor of Chicago, who is the chief of staff.
Right.
There you go.
Like I said, the pollsters and everybody's got to realize the Democrats don't give a damn about you anymore. They really did. And the leader of the Senate said it best. For every progressive Democrat we lose, we'll get 2 moderate Republicans. Well, the moderate Republicans know how bad Clinton screwed them, too, and couldn't trust her. But nobody will say that on a national TV. And sorry, guys.
No, I hear you, man. But I think what we're seeing, though, Peter, is that there is a movement here. Have you heard from John in Minneapolis, Minnesota? The Bernie movement is going, and I think it's strong in Michigan, too. Bernie, Peter, who is a regular and great caller to this show, is obviously looking to see if the Democrats that are the progressive wing, the non-corporate wing, are going to, seize control, if you might, of the Michigan party, the Democratic Party. The same thing in Minnesota. Are you seeing those signs, or are there still roadblocks?